Are we having fun?
I don't know yet.
Come on, energy, energy, energy.
I can't believe it's like week 8.
Yes, I
was
know.
like, I was setting up week 9 high school football. I was like, there's only 3 high school football weeks left, and then the playoffs start.
Really?
I'm like, where is it all going?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that we're getting close to the end of the season.
Football season is like that, though. It's just like, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, it's just like, there's just so much to do, like, every week. On the 60.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, you're up.
And welcome to College Football Now, Week 8. It's past the midpoint of the season. It's crazy. We were just talking
about the fact that
about how fast it's gone and how fast it's going. Still a lot of football to play, but just amazing at how quick it's going. I'm Brant Parsons. That's Matt Michelle. We are live. You can watch us on Facebook Live. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, then you can ask us questions throughout. We have questions that we'll sprinkle in. We've got some games to pick, but before we go into it, we haven't talked formally about it yet. But of course, the Big 12 decision, the no decision, came out this week.
Indecision 2016.
And I'm still waiting. There's a lot of people that owe me apologies and pat me on the back because I was right, because I decided they weren't going to put UCF in, and if anything, they were only going to do 2, and it was only going to be Houston, BYU, or Cincinnati. They did none. The Big 12 not expanding. I wasn't shocked by the news. Some people may have been, but it's good to be done with this and moving on. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the Big 12. No news is good news with you.
Well, I just think this is what we've been talking about for weeks now. Everyone has been saying to us, listen, something was going to happen at some point, something, whether it was going to be adding schools or not adding schools or whatever it was going to be. And I think what we've seen right now is, the decision the Big 12 made was a financial one. It was one based on the fact that they felt like, adding schools wasn't going to help them at this point. I think behind the scenes, what we're seeing is you're seeing some of the television networks, ESPN and Fox, maybe from where there were reports, have sat down with the Big 12 and said, listen, we'll give you a little more money. We'll bump up some of your cash flow, for your TV revenue. Maybe if you don't expand, with the idea that, again, adding those extra schools would have probably cost them a lot more money. We're talking maybe, anywhere from the, $40 to $80 million range as well. So I think in the end, this was just the Big 12 trying to decide what do we want to do. Unfortunately, it became very much a public scenario with it happening. A lot of schools spent a lot of money putting forth presentations to try to, showcase what they could bring to the Big 12. In the end, it didn't really matter. And now the Big 12 decides it's going to remain at 10 members. It'll be interesting to see. I know Bob Bowsby, the commissioner, and Dave Boren, the chair of the board of directors, both said this was done. The idea of expansion was done for now. And we'll see what happens in the next year. I'm still not 100% sold on the idea that we're not going to be talking about conference realignment in the next couple of years, because I think, let's be honest, if the Big 12 gets left out of this year's playoff, you might begin to hear this be brought up once again. But we'll see what happens. I'm sure this is something that a lot of Mike Oresco from The American, who I talked to yesterday, was a little bit relieved by the fact that this is now over with and they can focus on their actual conference.
And I'm excited we don't talk about conference realignment for the rest of the season.
for the rest of the season.
At least this season.
At least this season.
We get the rest of the year. We don't have to talk about it or even wonder about it. Starting off with our picks this week, Florida and Florida State are off, but UCF heads to Connecticut. It's the civil conflict.
They still call that?
I don't know. Is anybody calling it that? It's the fourth ever meeting of the big traditional rivalry between UCF and Connecticut. It's going to be on ESPN News Saturday at 12 o'clock. Last year, UConn won 40-13. Huskies come into this game with a strong run defense. They're only averaging about 130 yards per game on the ground. Nothing spectacular on offense, but they're disciplined. Only 29 penalty yards a game. UCF, of course, the home team here, most people watching know that they blew homecoming last week a huge lead, 25-7. Gave up a 70-yard drive in 4 plays in 31 seconds. Touchdown with 1 second left. Payback for a few of those last-second wins UCF had. And, of course, gave up 7 sacks in this game. And UCF's defense has been doing well, sacking the opposing team quarterback. They've had 5 in each of the last 3 games, but they gave up 7 in this last game. And that offensive line, it's part of when you're building a new offense, and it's one of those things that takes a while to gel, but you can't have your quarterback getting hit that much. UCF went from being a bowl team to now they're back to being rebuilding mode for me. I'm taking UConn in this game. UConn has a win over Cincinnati, which maybe now we're looking at maybe isn't as big as we thought at the time, but UCF's going to go on the road, and I'm taking UConn in this one, in a close one, until UCF can shore up that offensive line and take some of the heat off a very young quarterback. It could cost them, and I think that the disappointment also from Saturday's loss may linger over a little bit on this one.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm still sold on UCF right now at this point. I think they're going to win this game. Obviously, giving up the touchdown late doesn't make their cause. As you mentioned, that was a game they really almost needed to have, because if you're looking at the bowl eligibility range, you're looking at 6 wins. That would have been their 4th. It would have helped them out. It didn't happen. As you mentioned, the offensive line, the woes, they can't seem to protect Mackenzie Milton. I think that's something that's going to be key for them. I think they'll come back this week knowing that was a key issue against Temple. If they can get Milton some opportunities out there, and some of that is being an inexperienced young quarterback. Some of that is a guy not able maybe to, instead of taking the ball under his wing and scrambling a little bit more, maybe sitting back in the pocket too much to throw the football. They only rushed for almost 80 yards last week against Temple. That's not what I think Scott Frost wants to do with this offense. I think he wants to be kind of a balanced run-pass type offense. That's another reason why I think Milton was sacked so many times. I just don't think you don't want him sitting back in the pocket all the time, looking for receivers downfield. I still think that, UCF is a team, obviously, that's growing. I think this team is getting better at some points, and I think defensively this team is going to be a little bit better. I like them going into this game. I think they get the win. I think it's going to be close, though, as you mentioned, because, again, road game, coming off a difficult loss. I think UCF will come out and find a way to win.
Probably just blew any chance to have UCF sending me apology tweets, right?
I think you're not going to get any of those forever. So
before we get into this next game, a trivia question. I got a few trivia questions from Matt. Start off with a hard one. Miami plays Virginia Tech Thursday night. This game we're going to talk about. Virginia Tech has appeared on Thursday night 30 times. There's only one school. I'll give you a quick hint. It's in the ACC. Which school in the ACC has appeared on Thursday night more times than Virginia Tech?
Well, I would say Miami because
it's not
Georgia Tech. Then.
Georgia Tech. Hey,
it's always
you got
the
it
Techs.
right.
It's always the Techs because there's always used to be Georgia Tech. Virginia Tech was a Thursday night.
Georgia Tech has appeared 32 times on Thursday night. They're the only team, the only school that has more appearances than Virginia Tech has wins on Thursday night. So these two are always on Thursday night.
Tell me what I've won.
You've won a chance to pick this game. Miami takes on Virginia Tech on Thursday night. Mark Richt, Miami head coach, hoping to not lose 3 straight games for the second time in his 15-year career. Miami coming off losses to Florida State and North Carolina, where they struggled to move the ball in offense. Lost both games, only giving up 20 points. Mark Walton and Joe Yearby, they're the keys for Miami. They have 14 rushing touchdowns. Virginia Tech, quietly, Jared Evans, most people may not know this, but a quarterback who is becoming a force in the ACC. In fact, he has the top quarterback rating in the ACC. He's thrown 17 touchdown passes. Only a guy named Deshaun Watson has more touchdown passes than him. Miami, though, 17-3 on Thursday nights. I'm throwing the numbers at you since 2000. 18-3. Mark Richt gets his milestone win. He avoids a 3-game losing streak. Miami, they've had to rebound from a lot. They've got suspensions and injuries on defense, but the short week. They're going to go on the road, and I think they're going to get a little bit of that swagger back that they've lost the last 2 games. I'm going to say Miami beats Virginia Tech.
I'm disagree on this one. I think as much as I think Miami is getting better as a program, as much as I think that Mark Richt has done an amazing job, I look at the last 2 games for them, and I see a disturbing pattern. I think defensively they're still a tough team, when it comes to facing teams, high-powered offenses. Florida State and especially North Carolina last week, they held them to 20 points. But I think the injuries are starting to stack up on the defensive side of the football. They've got 2 or 3 defensive linemen who aren't going to be available this week at Virginia Tech. I think going on the road to a place like Blacksburg on a Thursday night, which Virginia Tech we know loves to take a part of, I think this is going to be a tough assignment for them. I think Brad Kai has struggled in the last couple weeks. I think offensively, Mark Richt has struggled calling the offense. I don't feel like this offense has really taken advantage of some situations. Maybe I think they're just trying to get their balance, trying to make sure they can figure out how to handle some of these situations. I think it's a difficult assignment to go on the road in a short week, as you mentioned, to Blacksburg. So I'm taking Virginia Tech. I think Justin Fuente, after you're replacing a little coaching legend like Frank Beamer, to come in and lead the team like they've been able to do. Obviously, you mentioned Jared Evans. There's a guy that, no surprise, that the quarterback under Justin Fuente would actually thrive. That's something that Fuente has done a really good job of doing, is producing great quarterbacks. We saw that last year at Memphis. So I like what Virginia Tech is doing. Obviously, if they were to beat Miami, this would give this team a little leg up going into the ACC Coastal.
Last 6 quarters have been tough to watch offensively for Miami.
Yeah.
Since that halftime at Florida State, they just kind of fell off the play calling map.
And I think also too, the rushing attack. I think we saw early on when they jumped out to that 4-0 record. I think the running attack was something that really helped keep them that balance, that made sure that Brad Kai didn't have to carry the whole offense on his shoulders. I think the last 2 games that rushing attack has gone away a little bit, and I think they've forced Kai now to become more of a downfield passer, and that's just not something he's really comfortable at doing right now. And they need to get back to that balance if they're going to win these games.
All right, let's go around the country. The Heartland Trophy, a trophy that's so revered. It's been around 10 years. Number 10, Wisconsin visits Iowa. They've split this trophy winnings 5 times each. Last year, Iowa won 10-6 on their way to their great season. Wisconsin comes in. They have 2 losses to the number 2 and the number 3 team in the country by 7 points each. They also have a win over LSU. This is a good Wisconsin team. Iowa comes in still trying to get their feet under them this season after the great year they had last year. C.J. Beathard, not maybe on the same level as he was last year. He does have 2 fourth-quarter comeback or game-winning drives in the fourth quarter this year. Desmond King, Jim Thorpe Award winner last year, only has 1 pick. He took it for a pick 6 last week, and he's getting tested. He's not giving up a lot, but still he's not the dynamic playmaker that he was last year. Wisconsin is good, and they took Michigan to the end, and obviously they had Ohio State where they wanted them before losing that game in overtime. They are going on the road, but I'm going to take Wisconsin in this one. They're the 3rd best team in the Big Ten, and they're going to show that on Saturday.
Can we talk about what a great job Justin Wilcox, the defensive coordinator, who came in after Dave Aranda left to go take the job at LSU. He comes in, and really they don't miss a beat. This defense is one of the best defenses in the country. We saw what they were able to do against Michigan. We saw what they were able to do against Ohio State. I think they're going to do the same sort of thing against Iowa. I think the Badgers win this week. I think the Big Ten West, as much as everyone wants to focus on the East with the Ohio States and the Michigans and Penn State, I think look at the West. What a great division race. You talk about Wisconsin, you talk about Nebraska, you've got Iowa in the mix as well. Northwestern's coming back strong.
Playing good.
Northwestern playing well. This division is one that's going to come down to the wire, and it's interesting to watch. I like Wisconsin in this game. I think they win the game.
TCU visits West Virginia. West Virginia has won 6 in a row, 10 of 11. They're one of the undefeated teams in the Big 12. I mean,
them and Baylor. That's it.
And Baylor. That was going to be my other trivia question, but since you got the other one, I was like, well, he's obviously going to get this one. But West Virginia, undefeated coming in this one. They haven't been tested in the Big 12. It's going to get tougher. It starts this weekend with TCU visiting Morgantown. Skylar Howard, he's been the key for West Virginia. He's in the top 15 in the country in a variety of categories on offense. TCU comes in with the nation's longest active streak of at least 20 points in a game. That's 36 games. And Kenny Hill, the leader of TCU, one of 3 players nationally to rank in the top 5 in total offense as a quarterback. But this is going to be an offensive showdown. But I think the difference in this one is West Virginia's got a pretty opportunistic defense. and they've been able to play well. I think that'll be enough at home. West Virginia, the surprise team in the Big 12, will continue on at least for one more week. They beat TCU on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think West Virginia's done a great job. And it's not just about their offense. I think everyone sees Dana Holgorsen and they assume it's going to be about throwing the ball downfield and scoring 50, 60 points a game. It hasn't really been that case. It's been about the defense. Just look what the Mountaineers were able to do against Texas Tech last week. They took a guy in Patrick Mahomes, who's one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and made him look very ineffective in their offense. I think what's interesting about this matchup, too, as well, is these are the last two teams who joined the Big 12. Just kind of throw that in there as we go into this week of the Big 12 expansion not being brought in as well. Also point out the fact that as well as Kenny Hill has played this season, he has 8 interceptions, and that leads the Big 12. So I think that's something that he hasn't been able to do a good enough job of, which is eliminating those mistakes. I think West Virginia will take advantage of those mistakes. I think they win this game, go to 7-0, and give their kind of the last sort of hope for the Big 12 getting in the college football.
I mean,
playoff.
it's still Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas, still on the line for West Virginia, but don't sleep on the Mountaineers.
Don't sleep on the Mountaineers.
They're the real deal, and I think they'll prove it on Saturday. Real quick on this one, number 2 Ohio State heads to Penn State. It's the whiteout, 8 p.m. ABC, and I'm bringing this up only because I want to talk. We're both taking Ohio State in this one, but I want to talk about the Buckeyes from last week. They've now won a school record 20 consecutive true road games. It's the longest streak in the nation. It's the most since the University of Miami did it between 84 and 88. They have the 3rd scoring defense in the country. They have the 4th scoring offense in the country. Even after that tough game against Wisconsin, the offense still has put up points this year. Last year, though, Saquon Barkley was the difference, or almost the difference. He was a headache for Ohio State, rushing for almost 200 yards. But Ohio State, watching Wisconsin, are they better out of that, or do you have questions about Ohio State now as the number 2 team?
I still have questions. I mean, I think the Buckeyes defense is going to be one of their strong suits as they move forward. I think they've been able to do a lot of good things with that. I think one of the concerns I would have is JT Barrett a little bit. I think he's been running the ball a lot. A lot more, I think, than they thought he was going to be able to run. What makes Ohio State dangerous is when they have that good mix. When Barrett has a balance of throwing the ball and rushing and running the football. When you have that mix, I think you do a better job. When they get away from Mike Weber, when they get away from that rushing attack and they force it all, onto Barrett's shoulders, I think that's when they struggle a little bit offensively. I think that's what happened in the first half last week was Ohio State wasn't able to, get that balance going. I think Barrett felt like he had to do too much of the job so far. I think they got to get that balance back. Listen, Penn State is 0-6 against top 25 teams under James Franklin. They're going to be 0-7 when Ohio State beats them this weekend.
Proof that there may be too many teams in the top 25. Maybe we should get it down to 20. Number 23, Ole Miss visits number 25, LSU, and they're just filler in that to me at this point. They play Saturday night, 9 p.m., the 105th all-time meeting. It's a team that Ole Miss has played the second most behind Mississippi State. Chad Kelly comes in. He's thrown a touchdown pass in 19 straight games. LSU has won 2 games under interim head coach Ed Orgeron, who was the head coach at Ole Miss not too long ago. 30-plus point victories for them. Danny Etling has been the difference for LSU. He's coming. He's 3-1 as a starter. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. I am stupidly still behind Ole Miss, even after watching them lose to Arkansas last week. And I'm going to take the Rebels on the road against LSU because you're a little bit behind me on the season picks chart. So I want to let you back into it. I'm going to take Ole Miss in this one. I guess it would be an upset on the road. I don't know the point spreads, but winning at Death Valley on Saturday night.
Yeah, it would be an upset. This is an interesting fact. LSU has been favored in every game this season. And that's despite the fact that if you think that they, the struggles they've had, they fired Les Miles a couple of weeks ago. I think what's been incredible is the fact that LSU has turned around their offensive woes after they got rid of Les Miles. Ed Orgeron has done an amazing job getting the offense getting back on track. Although, let's be honest with you, it was against Missouri and Southern Miss. But in those 2 games, LSU has scored 12 touchdowns. And in the first 4 games going in there, they only had 11 total touchdowns. So, again, the offense is doing really well. I think one of the contributors is Darius Geis, the running back who stepped in for the injured Leonard Fournette. He's had an amazing couple weeks, averaging about 162 yards per game. I think he's going to be a factor here as well. I think Orgeron said Leonard Fournette may come back this week. He may be able to take part in this game. I think he will. But I look for Geis being the guy who's really going to step up and maybe kind of spell Fournette when there's times when he needs to kind of get a rest. I think that'll be able to get forward. I like LSU. I think LSU wins this game. Remember, each one of these games is like a little test for Ed Orgeron. He wants to get that job. He wants to finally get that head coaching gig, permanently. I think these games will help determine whether or not LSU decides to stick with him or get rid of him and try to find someone else in the offseason.
For as much time as we spent in the preseason talking about Oregon and Stanford and USC, even UCLA, and not enough time talking about Washington and not enough time talking about Utah. And they come into this weekend ranked number 19th in the country, head to LA to play UCLA. And we have, there are 13 bowl eligible teams. Utah is one of them. They're already 6-1 on the season. They're going to bowl for the third straight year, fourth time since joining the Pac-12. And they're doing it via turnovers. 17 turnovers have been forced by the Utah defense. And Mitch Wishnowski, the punter, he leads the league in punting, or the country in punting. Utah could have a third straight Ray Guy winner. The Bruins, though, one of the season's disappointments so far, at least by record. They're 3-4, 1-3 in the Pac-12. 4 losses have all been 9 points or less, 3 of them by a touchdown or less. But they've been losses. And UCLA, one of the teams we thought would be playing for the South, now they get a chance to be a spoiler in the South, and they host Utah on Saturday. I'm going with the road team in this one. I'm taking the Utes to knock off the Bruins.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Utah, what an amazing job Kyle Whittingham has done with this program. I think year in and year out, we always kind of assume there's going to be that letdown year, that maybe Utah won't be able to bounce back and be a solid top 25 team. But year in and year out, they continue to prove us wrong and continue to put us up. Maybe not us, but prove me wrong.
They proved you wrong a couple times.
To be able to get up there as well. I think Whittingham's done an amazing job with the offense. I think defensively then really sound. I want to throw this out there. I think we've talked about Clay Helton, the USC coach, being on the hot seat, especially after their rough start, and they seem to bounce back. I think now I'm looking at not only is Mark Helfrich, the Oregon coach, probably on the hot seat, I think maybe Jim Mora at UCLA might be, because, again, as you mentioned, they've had so many bad struggles. This is a team that many of us thought, including myself, they would win the South and be competing for the Pac-12 title. That's probably not going to be the case unless they upend Utah this weekend. I think Utah wins this game. I think UCLA's struggles continue on.
Number 17, Arkansas on the Plains to face number 21, Auburn. Again, talking about top 25. It's like Auburn's a top 25 team, but hey, that's how it goes. The SEC, it's rigged. This whole AP top 25 thing is, believe me. No, we're going to start here, and we have number 17, Arkansas, playing their first the first SEC road game of the season. They come in. Raleigh Williams III is the SEC rushing leader. Austin Allen, their quarterback, has 7 multiple touchdown passing games this season. But yet Auburn on the other side, they've held 6 of their last 7 opponents for under 20 points. And they have a guy named Cameron Peway, who scored 3 touchdowns at their last time out on 169 yards rushing. So I should pick Auburn, but I'm going to take Arkansas. I'm going to take the crazy guy, Brett Bielema, on the road. Arkansas after riding high after their win over Ole Miss, which it seems that they always do now. Go into Auburn, knock off the Tigers.
Well, I'm going to take Auburn in this one. And not just you look at what they've been able to do. I think what's helped Gus Malzahn, who went from possibly being on the hot seat to start the season to actually cool down a little bit, is I think they finally picked a quarterback. I think they finally found a quarterback who's able to run this offense, and that's been Sean White. And I think he's done a pretty good job of that. Plus, I think they've settled down offensively. They haven't tried to mix things up. Listen, your offense is never going to run effectively when you're shuttling in 2 or 3 different quarterbacks and to try to get things going on. I think they've been able to do a really good job. They found a good running back in Petaway, as you mentioned last week, who had 3 touchdowns. I think defensively they're also starting to get better. I think part of that hinges on the health of the team and the defense as well. I think because the fact that Arkansas has kind of gone through this gauntlet of ranked opponents the last couple weeks, I think they go to Auburn. I think Auburn pulls off the win. I think it'll be a huge win for them, and I think it kind of helps, propel them into a possible, maybe outside looking in the SEC West.
Some may even think they could be coming to Orlando to the Citrus Bowl around New Year's time.
Yeah.
Game of the week, number 6, Texas A&M on the road at number 1, Alabama. Texas A&M and Alabama are 2 of 3 teams that have 5 wins over Power 5 teams. So Texas A&M getting the job done against big-time opponents just like Alabama. A&M comes in. They lead the SEC with rushing almost 275 rushing yards per game. They're 6.5 yards per carry average, over a half a yard better than any other SEC team. University of Alabama, all they do is win. 19 straight wins for Nick Saban, ties the longest that they've had with him as the head ball coach there. and they've played 66 games in the history of the AP poll as the number 1 team in the country, and they've only lost 10 times. They're 37-5. They played 42 of those games as number 1 under Nick Saban. Just since Saban has been at Alabama, they've played 42 games as the number 1 team in the country. They come into this one, and I'm taking Alabama. I'm telling you why. 11 non-offensive touchdowns for Alabama. It doesn't matter who your quarterback is. It doesn't matter that your running back is in the NFL. If your defense and your punt returning and your kick returns are scoring points for you, you just can't be stopped. Crimson Tide win this one. 21 touchdowns the last 2 years, or a year and a half now for Alabama, non-offensive 11. It's the most in the Saban era. Insane.
And I agree with you on this point that I think Alabama is the best college football team out there right now, hands down. I know Ohio State's playing well. I know Michigan's playing well. I know Clemson's had their issues. Louisville,
Alabama, hands down.
I think Alabama is right now is playing overall the best overall the best football right now. As you mentioned, from offense, defense, special teams, what they've been able to do, they look so impressive against Tennessee. I mean, you mentioned going back to the Cotton Bowl was when they started the streak of games straight with non-offensive touchdowns. I think that's been impressive as well. Texas A&M has faced the number 1 team twice in the last 3 or 4 years. And you know who that was?
It's Alabama.
They
got him once. Got him in 2012.
Got him back when Johnny Manziel led them.
Yep.
Johnny Football led them to win. I like Alabama.
How's he doing now anyways?
Yeah, that's true. I like Alabama in this game. I don't think really this was probably going to be their biggest test moving forward. I think once they get through this, I think you look ahead maybe to Auburn. But even then, I don't think that's going to be the case. I like what Alabama's doing. I think they're going to be number 1 until almost the very end.
Twitter questions. Let's wrap up the show with some questions from
Juice. And if you got some questions, please send them
Juice
right
Stilling. Yeah, kind of send us questions all week. A couple questions that we want to touch upon. First one here. Just want to make sure that we do this down the right order. There we go. Biggest surprise of the season for you? Biggest disappointment so far?
I think the biggest surprise, and I'm just going to take this as a team-wise, I think biggest surprise for me has been how well we've seen teams like Washington play. When Washington coming in, I think we knew that Chris Peterson was doing a really good job with this Huskies team, but I felt like maybe they were another year away from being this good. I think for them to be in the top 5 mix, top 6 mix, is pretty incredible. I think Jake Browning has done an amazing job. I mean, he talk about not getting any love because of the Pac-12. He plays all the way on the West Coast, and very few people on the East Coast are even talking about him. They're talking about Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson, but here's a guy who's already put up 23 touchdowns. They've done a really good job. I think if their offensive line could get a little bit stronger, I think there's a team that's going to be right there in the mix as well.
So my surprise of the season, I would say West Virginia. We've already talked about them, but I would add Michigan because of how good they've been.
Yeah.
Biggest disappointment, Clemson. I know they're undefeated. I know they're the number 4 team in the country, but they struggled against Auburn. They needed the will of God to keep the kick from NC State not going in. I mean, an actual pick would probably be Oregon and as a disappointment because it's hard to be too disappointed when you're undefeated. But I really thought this Clemson team would be better and not be struggling in games and being in tight games that they shouldn't be in if they're one of the top teams in the country.
I think my disappointment would have to be Notre Dame. I think we talked about them before. I mean, just going in, I had them in my preseason, getting into the playoff, and you just look at how poorly this team has played. Where now, there seems to be they were out-coached, they were outplayed, they've had to fire the defensive coordinator at some point in this season. I think and they're on the verge of really kind of falling off the precipice of being relevant. I mean, if they lose a couple more games, this could be the worst season they've had since 2007 when Charlie Weiss took them to 3-9 record. I mean, that's horrible. And you start to wonder if Brian Kelly is going to be around at the end of this season, if they'll give him another year to try to fix things up, or if they'll decide maybe it's time to make the move right now.
Notre Dame, team you had in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Michigan State, team that has had been in the Big Ten trial, could both miss bowls this year.
Yeah. First time since the mid-2000s.
Right on the precipice right now. They need to win out in the games they're supposed to win just to reach the bowl games. All right, next Twitter question. We talked a little bit about Washington. The second question, we don't need to get into Ohio State, Michigan at this point, but I want to know your thoughts on Washington. You mentioned them as a surprise team. What hurdles do they have left? Because where they're sitting, any of those words work, how if they finish undefeated, they're going to be in the playoffs. If they win out.
I think if they finish undefeated, they're going to be in the playoff. I think their biggest hurdle is going to be Washington State. I think the Apple Bowl, Apple Cup, could actually be the for once in a while be a huge critical game for them, because you got Washington State coming in. You've seen what Mike Leach has been able to do. Last year, that team won 9 games. They're not going to be as good this year, but they got a good, strong quarterback in Luke Falk. I think they've done some good things. They beat Stanford. Again, they're starting to kind of get that rebound. I think that's the game right now on the schedule that I would circle as that could be a potential, upset, because if something happens there and they get knocked down, listen, if the Pac-12, maybe a one-loss Pac-12 team could find their way into the playoff, but I think it's going to be difficult. I think that's why you almost have to wish that someone goes undefeated to Pac-12, and that only leaves Washington in that mix, and Utah. Well, no, Utah's got, so I mean,
Utah has
Washington. So that really leaves Washington in the mix. So that's where these conferences like, the Pac-12, and the ACC even a little bit, are looking around saying, we can't have that one-loss team because we're not sure if we're going to be able to get in, because you see how good Ohio State is. You see how good Michigan is. You see how good Alabama is. Again, there are going to be teams that are going to be right at the door knocking in, so you can't stumble late down the road.
Last question, and again, thanks, Drew Stilling, for these questions.
Yes.
Any one-loss team you think might still make the playoff? And we'll preface it. You look at, it's week 8, but you look at the rankings now, if you will, and you've got undefeated Alabama, and you have Ohio State, Michigan undefeated. You would think they'll end up playing each other. Clemson undefeated, Washington undefeated, some undefeateds after that. But some of them are going to end up with losses. It's almost a reality in college football. Are there any of the one-loss teams already that are just sitting there waiting? And then I'll add a one-loss team also. Whoever loses between Ohio State and Michigan, would they be a team in the playoff? But any one-loss team now that you think can make the playoff? Well,
I think at this moment, the closest one I could think of has got to be Louisville. And I mean, because they don't play Clemson and more than likely they're unless Florida State beats Clemson and there's a 3-way tie and somehow they get into the conference championship discussion. If they're left out of that, I mean, their schedule's easy enough. They can go through and beat, win out the rest of their games and only have that one loss. So there's a team that's right there. But I that strong. I don't know if they'll State. I think with one loss, I think they'd still have strong enough of a case to get themselves in there. I think what's going to hurt them a little bit is their early schedule. Their non-conference schedule wasn't that strong. I think Colorado being well helps them. If Colorado were to win the South, that would definitely help Michigan get a little bit of a boost. Because if you're looking at their schedule right now, what's their strongest win? What's their signature win of the season? And I don't necessarily know if they have. Wisconsin is it right now, and that's where I think you're going to have to keep moving forward. You got to hope Wisconsin does well. Maybe an SEC team, but again, I mean, you look around and you think
I don't know if there's
anyone there that you could.
How many only have one loss?
There has one loss
because Alabama, if they actually lost.
SEC has, again, like we talked about, such strong conference. They just keep beating up on each other, and what happens is eventually you just don't have that. So again, I think that's where you're left at. That's where you might be able to see a conference get 2 teams in. If it just comes out to be there's not a strong enough team. I don't see Houston with one loss getting it, even if they win the American. I mean, really, honestly, that's the strange thing about this year is you're a lot of teams at the top, but the middle's just kind of muddled right now until we finally see some teams kind of rise up a little bit.
And if some of the top teams lose, then it plays in. Another point on Louisville, even if Clemson loses to Florida State, Louisville still doesn't play for the ACC title. If they're not playing for the ACC title, I don't think that they get in.
Yes.
Even with the one loss, so they need Clemson to lose twice.
They need Clemson to lose twice. I mean, so there's. I'm limiting. I'm just saying is if
I'm just adding to it.
Yes,
but they're probably the best one-loss team out there.
Best one-loss team out there.
But because of how everything played out.
Yeah, and you also get the idea that, believe me, as much as they'll look at statistics and breakdowns, because I was there to see how it's done, it's going to be a little bit in your mind seeing a guy like Lamar Jackson possibly finding his way into the playoff would be entertaining as well for the college football playoff. Not that they would decide on that factor. That's not one of the factors, but I think deep down in your mind you would imagine that would be a really good matchup to have going on.
Lots of great picks and lots of great coverage all weekend long at OrlandoSentinel.com. For Matt Michelle, I'm Brent Parsons. We're here every Wednesday at 3:30 making picks and answering your questions at OrlandoSentinel.com's College Football Now.